might not fully sense it yet, but you're standing in a quiet stretch of your life where something is beginning to shift. It's subtle, like a soft touch brushing the edge of your awareness, but it's real. Nothing around you looks different, yet something inside keeps turning toward a feeling you can't explain, like a whisper calling from just outside your focus. Lately, that strange anticipation you've been feeling, that restlessness with no clear source, that sense that something is moving toward you rather than something you're chasing, none of that is accidental. This feeling belongs to a psychological moment Jung understood deeply, the moment a person becomes next in line, not chosen randomly, not selected by luck, but signaled by an inner readiness that only appears after long, quiet internal work. This message didn't reach you by mistake. You've crossed an invisible threshold your conscious mind is only beginning to notice. When life chooses you back, it rarely arrives loudly. It shows up softly, precisely, and in a way you can't ignore once you've felt it. To see why this matters, step inside the psychology behind it. Jung often described these moments as psychological ripening, the invisible restructuring that happens long before your outer life changes. Being next isn't magic, it's a state of readiness the psyche reaches when it has finally outgrown its previous shape. Before anything new appears, the unconscious starts rearranging itself to carry the weight and expansion the next chapter demands. That's why this period feels tense, emotional, and strangely expectant. Most people mistake this phase for confusion, pressure, or falling apart. But what's actually happening is alignment, your inner and outer worlds beginning to move toward the same destination. You move into this next position when the unconscious decides you're ready, when something inside you shifts just enough for the path ahead to open. What follows is the slow season of ripening, a quiet chapter where your inner world expands in directions you haven't yet named. It's like roots growing under winter soil, unseen, unimpressive, yet powerful enough to reshape the ground above. There's no announcement when this season begins. It starts as a subtle widening inside you, the kind that changes you from the inside long before anything external matches it. Jung believed the unconscious evolves ahead of us, preparing the next version of us before we can imagine becoming them. While the ego thinks in timelines and goals, the psyche works in seasons, slow, organic, inevitable. In this season, it works on you. Ripening doesn't feel like victory. It feels like being done with old versions of yourself you once protected fiercely. Conversations that once mattered begin to fall flat. Conflicts that once hooked you lose their force. Patterns that shaped you stop fitting. You don't fight them off. You simply stop belonging to them. A quiet readiness begins replacing avoidance, not as confidence, but as a sense that the old spaces of your life have become too small. You're drawn to depth without knowing why. You seek truth instead of distraction. You choose alignment over familiarity. The ego may mistake this for stagnation or numbness, but the unconscious knows it's completing a long apprenticeship within you. This phase isn't about adding more. It's about shedding what blocks your natural direction. Beliefs that once protected you, identities that once grounded you, patterns that made sense in a smaller world. Readiness is not a state of elevation. It's the quiet release of what no longer fits. And once this inner work completes, quiet, steady, unnoticed, the outer world begins to shift in response. Life starts revealing what has been forming behind the scenes, waiting for the moment you finally had enough space inside to meet it. As this ripening finishes its work, the atmosphere of your life tilts slightly until what was once vague becomes unmistakably clear. This is the unveiling, the moment life starts showing you what was always there, but invisible until now. Jung believed the unconscious reveals truth only when the ego is strong enough to carry it. So if clarity is showing up now, it's not random. Something in you has matured into it. Being next isn't about timing. It's about finally being able to see without collapsing, acknowledge without running, understand without distorting. And the first sign of this unveiling is simple. You can no longer pretend not to know. The half-truths you leaned on don't hold. The roles you tried to fit into feel thin. Certain relationships become painfully clear, some more loyal than you realized, others built on compromise you can no longer ignore, because Elusio. A quiet pull begins calling you toward what's real, toward choices that expand rather than contain you. You notice the subtle ways you've held yourself back, the safety habits, the masks, the postponed dreams. This clarity can feel destabilizing because illusions fall away before new structure appears. But the truth is simple. This unveiling isn't a disruption, it's confirmation. Proof that the next chapter is already assembling itself behind you. The psyche reveals truth only when truth becomes a doorway. Once truth has surfaced, the emotional body begins reorganizing itself for the life that is coming. Your emotions start shifting like a river current, changing direction long before the surface shows it. This is where being next becomes an internal experience. The psyche doesn't begin with decisions, it begins with feelings. Jung saw emotions as the language of the unconscious, the place where truth speaks before we have words. So as you approach a threshold, your emotional patterns slip out of their old forms. Comforts that once soothed you feel distant. Desires rise without explanation. Urges to grow, leave, change, create, they come from a deeper place than logic. You detach from things that once consumed you, not out of apathy, but instinct. At the same time, a quiet courage gathers, not loud, but inevitable. Something that doesn't feel like who you were, but feels exactly like who you're becoming. People often mistake this for instability, but it's the psyche aligning itself with the chapter already forming. Before new opportunities appear, your feelings loosen their hold on the past. Before new people enter, your heart releases old attachment. Before a role expands, your inner world stretches. When this emotional shift completes, the outer world begins responding precisely, almost unnervingly. What was stuck begins to move, not chaotically, but with intention. Jung believed the psyche's direction inevitably shapes the world around it. Once the unconscious commits to a path, reality reorganizes to match it. Paths close. Opportunities you once ran after fall away. Relationships lose their weight. Situations that held you still loosen their grip. All of this feels sudden, but it's simply life clearing space for what's approaching. New openings appear at perfect moments. People show up with timing too exact to be ignored. Something resolves effortlessly after months of stagnation. A stranger says exactly what you needed. This isn't coincidence, it's coherence. Life aligning itself around your readiness. As the world rearranges, it behaves like it's reading an internal script. You haven't fully learned yet. This isn't a test, it's the final alignment. Your inner world has shifted. Your emotional body has realigned. And reality is now bending to meet the version of you that's emerging. All that remains is learning to step through the doorway when it opens. Now that life is responding to your readiness, the task is simple. Don't rush and don't hesitate. Rushing is self-abandonment. Holding back is denial. Let old roles fall away. They've served their purpose. Trust the clarity, even if it unsettles the self you've been. Follow the impulses rising from deeper within. Their guidance, not noise. Stop negotiating with people or versions of yourself that dilute your direction. Move toward what feels true without sprinting. The path needs presence, not speed. Allow endings without demanding meaning. Closure comes later. Remember, You're not preparing for transformation. You're inside it. You've reached a moment that isn't about prediction, but recognition. The fact you're here at all means something essential. Your psyche has entered the phase where life can finally move. Nothing inside you would be shifting this way unless something was already forming, already approaching, already aligning with your readiness. You didn't arrive here by accident. You're here because the threshold is no longer ahead. It's beneath your feet. And what comes next isn't luck or chance. It's the natural outcome of all the inner work you've already completed.